Hello everyone, my name is Jesse Maurer, Worship and Creative Arts Pastor here at Maple City Chapel. I want to welcome you to today's podcast. During today's conversation, Senior Pastor Dr. Jay Shetler will be sitting down with Carol Bender to talk about her journey through anxiety. Let's join the conversation now. Here's Pastor Jay.
So we're in a sermon series called Not Alone on mental health, and doing these podcasts as a part of that. And this one is related to anxiety. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of your story, Carol. Before that, I'd love just for the listeners to get to know you a little bit. Take a moment and introduce yourself, if you would.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm Carol Bender. LaVon and I have been married for 43 years, and we have 4 children. 2 of our daughters are in their forever home waiting on us. Heather would turn 39 on Friday.
Wow.
And Carmen would be 36 years old. And we have Corey. He is our son, who is married and has 2 daughters. And then Kaylin is our daughter, who is married and has a little guy, a 1-year-old.
So you're grandparent. We are not lucky enough to be grandparents yet. How are you enjoying this season of
Grandparenting is amazing. Yes, it really is. It's just fills you up. And yeah, we get up early mornings like this morning, I got to take the girls to school. And last night when I went to bed, there was a funny video that Kaylin sent me of Hugo. And so, yeah, it's great. It's wonderful.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
You guys have been attending Maple City Chapel how long now?
Around 30 years,
30
close
years.
to 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's.
Do you remember what brought you to Maple City?
We had been in Louisville, Kentucky for several years prior to that, and just our experience in that church there, and then we came back to the church home we had been in, and we just felt like we were wanting more, I guess, of what we had been experiencing while we were in Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay.
At Louisville Mennonite Fellowship, and found this to be like home.
Okay. I have some very clear memories of you and LaVon. We had Michael and Hannah.
Uh-huh.
Hannah was particularly fussy and wouldn't let anyone hold her, but for whatever reason, she would let LaVon hold her. She wouldn't let her grandparents hold her at the time, but so you and LaVon must have sat close to us at some point in the church.
Yeah, I do remember that, her looking over the shoulders and seeing us. You commenting that that's not common for her to do
It
that.
wasn't that common at all.
Yeah.
And you've been involved in different ways here at the church in leading different things, volunteering in different ways. Tell us a little bit about that.
There was quite a number of years that I was leading the kitchen ministry team. And that was during the time when we had classes on Wednesday evening.
That's right.
And so we'd serve a meal.
Huge meal for lots of people.
Did. The first, at the beginning when we started, it was like 70 people or so. And I had a team like made out of schedule and had, several people who would come in and help make the meal and serve the meal. And it was really a really wonderful time of ministry, even to those of us in the kitchen, but then
right.
for the families to be able to come. And it did grow to like around 250.
Yeah.
By the time we were finished, we were serving about 200.
So it was quite a task.
It was, but it really was very, very fulfilling. It was really exhausting, but really was one of the, like when I look back over my life, that's one of the gems.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I really did enjoy that a lot.
What made it so enjoyable?
I think it was, I had a desire to do food and to serve others through that. But it was also the time that we spent in the kitchen, like the people who would come in and we would work together. And it oftentimes got a little harried.
Right.
But just the teamwork is what was so enjoyable for me.
Yeah. I've always seen you having a bit of a shepherding gift, and I think you were shepherding that team and
Right.
kind of pastoring that team. And yeah.
Probably.
And then you were also leading our women's ministry for
I
a season.
did. After that, there was a season that I was leading the women's ministry.
Okay.
Yeah, there came a time when I felt like God was saying I was hiding in the kitchen.
Mm.
Like, okay, okay. But yes, then I did go on to lead the women's ministry for a little while, and that was also very fulfilling. And that ended when I needed to really focus on caregiving with my mom
Okay.
when she was close to the end of her life.
Okay. I don't know if you'd remember or not, but I think this is when you were leading the women's ministry. I was fairly new, and you had some words of encouragement or prophetic words for the staff at one point in time.
Oh.
And I still have a sticky note here.
Oh, you do?
It says, walk boldly in God's call for your life.
Okay.
And that was a word I needed at the time.
Okay.
And I've kept it close by ever since because it's been a very meaningful encouragement for me. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
God's used you, I'm sure, beyond what you realize. So
I've always felt like the gift of encouragement was one that he graciously has given me. And so I want to hold it. I want to give encouragement where he's asking. So I'm glad to hear that.
that's great. Well, let's jump into your story around anxiety a little bit. Tell me about that. Like when did you first notice anxiety in your life, and how did it start?
Well, I would say the first time it was brought up to me as anxiety that I realized what it was we were having a conference here at church, and I, along with a friend of mine, were in charge of doing the meals, and we were going to do the Wednesday through Sunday, and Wednesday we had a meal. It started with 20 people, and then it kept growing until we had 1,200 on Sunday.
Right.
And we were doing several meals a day. So that Wednesday evening, after we had served that first dinner, I went home in the middle of the night. I woke up and I thought I was having a heart attack. And Levon actually took me to the emergency room. And so they did the whole barrage of tests and all of that, kept me for the night. And the next morning, the doctor came in and he said, I'm quite certain that it's anxiety, but I want to do a stress test just to be sure. I said, okay, but can we hurry? I have work to do.
I've got to get back to the church. Wow.
So that was the first time I had heard that it was given a label for me.
Okay. And what was that like to hear that label?
Well, it was really, I was kind of embarrassed. I felt like I felt like I wasn't strong enough to do what was in front of me to do, although I did come back and we did serve all those meals and we did it. I guess, yeah, it was kind of embarrassing and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. The other thing that I know, like now when I look back, hindsight is 2020. It was also the time of perimenopause in my life. And I did not realize that anxiety can be a part of that.
Right. And we just had a podcast all about hormones and that being part of it.
We did.
Yeah.
And it definitely impacted me in a pretty huge way. And so I found that when I was in a stressful situation, which that could, maybe the way I would define that is if it was like I was needing to serve a meal to 100 people, 200 people, that could get just everything, the planning and the getting it done, and then the serving. The crunch time of serving was always really stressful. Okay. And then that's when that anxiety would really make itself known.
Yeah.
It was one of the times it did that.
So you went to the ER, got cleared medically, went back to the church. Yes. Did you tell anyone about it in that moment? Did you talk about it with anyone? Like how did you handle that going forward? Well,
I know that I did with Joanne. She was in the kitchen with me.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how soon it was after that. I did end up going to see a therapist, and I also went to see the doctor. Well, I needed to make a follow-up call. A follow-up visit. Okay. They wanted me to do that. So because of the other ways that it was showing itself in my life, because it was also showing its face in my day-to-day, just
Say more about that. Like, how did it show up for you?
Well, oftentimes I would wake up in the middle of the night, and there's just kind of a crushing
Mm.
feeling in my chest, and lots of my mind would just whir and whir and whir,
Mm.
and always felt like there wasn't enough time, or it wasn't going to be finished, or it wasn't going to work out, whatever it was that I was.
And it was usually something specific on your mind, like you were thinking about
Yes.
an event or a
Yes.
situation. And,
Yes.
Yeah.
So through the therapy and then going to see my physician, also started on medication. And I also believe the healing grace of God along with those. I mean, it really did. I experienced a lot of healing in it. And then I also know that, it was the onset of it was with perimenopause. So then my body was kind of working through some of those things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I want to, in a bit, dive deeper in some of the therapy and medicine and how that affected you. When I think of the impact of anxiety, like it affects us physically,
Yeah.
it affects our thoughts, it affects so many different parts of us. And you've already talked about this a little bit, but when you think of how it affected your body, sleep is difficult. And can you say more about that? Like, how did it affect you physically?
Well, I wasn't able to sleep well. And then I also had migraines.
Mm.
And so it would creep into, well, when I was going to work. So at the time I was working at Mattern's Butcher Shop in Corner Deli. I was
Okay.
making the soups
Okay.
that they were serving. And many a day I was back there in the kitchen over the pot of soup and, had tight shoulders and headache. And then there was the anxiety that would come in then too, just with time schedules and things like that.
Did you ever worry, like some people when they have that initial really kind of panic feeling and think maybe it's a heart attack, they go to the doctor says, I think it's anxiety. Some people can accept that. Some people are like, maybe it really is my heart. Maybe it really, like, did you struggle at all with accepting a diagnosis of anxiety, or was that pretty easy?
Yes. In fact, it happened one other time. And so it was, so probably the piece that was the most embarrassing to me is that the second time, I mean, I don't know that it was the second time that it happened necessarily, but there was another time that the chest pain was bad enough that we went to the emergency room again, and it was the same thing. And so then I said, I will never go to the emergency room again, thinking it's a heart attack.
Wow.
So that's kind of strong words I said to myself.
Yes. Yeah.
But yes, that is the way that it would affect me at
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. So the physical part, that also can affect, you mentioned your daily life relationships can be another part of that. How did it affect, I don't know, your marriage? You're a mom at the time too.
Right.
How did you find it affecting you in relationships?
Well, so a piece of that also was as my children were leaving home, because Kaylin was, then graduated from high school and we moved her to college. And so I'm also dealing with empty nest. And I really built this little, I don't know, a little walls around myself. And when I think about that time, that Corey and Kaylin weren't at home now anymore. And so it was back to Levon and I. And it wasn't, I guess I should have asked him again. Can you remember exactly what that was like? I mean, we made it through.
Yeah.
It was definitely not necessarily an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned the kind of the phase of life, empty nester and some things like that. And I know the focus of this is on anxiety today, but you've also shared early on about the loss of your two daughters and the grief. Did you find kind of the anxiety and sadness and grief kind of mixed together during that season too?
I did. And especially when, so this would have been right after, like 3 weeks after that, having that conference at church here,
Right.
and that I ended up at the emergency room and they said it's anxiety. Then we packed up Kaylin and took her up to Grand Rapids for college and moved her into an apartment. And I then went in coming home, I had a lot of anxiety wrapped around her safety. I mean, she was in the
Sure.
city,
Yeah.
and we are country people. I mean, I am country through and through. So yes, she's in the city, she's away from home, and so the worry and the anxiety about that. Um, and then I felt like it also really did throw me back into the grief that I felt because of the loss of Heather and Carmen years, years earlier.
Yeah.
So even though this is a different kind of loss, we still had Kaylin. She was not at home anymore. And so you kind of, I don't know, empty nest was just really hard.
Was it?
And I think individuals have their own journeys with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see those commercials. They're doing this little party. Yay, the kids are leaving. And I always go, wow, that was not my experience.
Yeah. Well, it's not surprising given the loss previously. Like, I think new losses trigger the pain of old losses. And
Right.
in some ways, I think that can be a positive thing in that it can provide another opportunity to work through the
Right.
pain of those previous losses. And God
Right.
can provide deeper healing. And
Right. Because I would say that has also been my experience, like looking back. I just see him doing layers upon layers and upon layers of healing, just
wow.
more redemption, more restoration. And I'm just really grateful for his healing mercy and grace in my life.
Yeah. Thinking about the way anxiety affects us, one of them would be our thoughts and our beliefs. And you alluded to this a little bit too, but as you're laying in bed and you can't sleep, your mind is racing. Like, say more about that part of anxiety, like how it affects your thoughts, your mind.
Well, it's not very life-giving, to say the least. Very discouraging. And so I would, I felt like instead of waking up in the morning and feeling refreshed and ready to go,
Sure.
you wake up, well, number one, not refreshed, so tired. And my mind is already, it feels really bogged down with, I don't know, you probably would have names of endorphins, things that my brain did while it was spinning around in that negative space.
Yeah.
Is not good.
Yeah. The way we think of anxiety is it's your body, your brain somehow sensing danger. And so very much like, an intruder comes in and, your body goes into this automatic response of preparation. And it's designed that way by God to help us respond to danger. But when that gets stuck in this loop of danger, and then it's just, 'cause you're not getting your sleep and it's exhausting. It really wears you out.
I oftentimes felt like I was on high alert.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was really a new feeling for me because I felt like prior to that, I felt like a pretty calm person, pretty flexible, and pretty calm person. And I didn't know, I didn't know where I went.
Yeah. So it didn't feel like this isn't me. Somehow it's this feeling of something else is kind of there. Yeah.
Right.
One of the things we find in psychology with anxiety is that certain thoughts are more likely to lead to feelings of anxiety.
Okay.
And so one of those are like, what if thoughts? Could you identify some of those, like in those moments
definitely. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So what if something goes wrong at college?
Oh,
what if, like
definitely.
that kind of a...
Yes. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What did you do to fight those thoughts as they came?
Well,
Or maybe I should even ask, were you aware those thoughts were connected to the anxiety and that those thoughts were part of the problem?
right. I guess I would say I mean, it was all a big ball of something that wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so I would say it is my relationship with Jesus is what got me through that. And journaling.
Do you recall specific times where it felt like Jesus gave you alternate thoughts? You know what I mean? Like reassuring thoughts or just a different perspective and how to see your situation or circumstances?
I know that oftentimes in the morning when I would get up and I just be having my time with him and be journaling, there was oftentimes verses that he would, or even that I was reading prior to that, that were very, very specific in whatever it was that I was kind of spinning around and worrying. That was really helpful. But I was just so grateful to be able to know that God wasn't tired of me coming to him over and over and over and over.
Wow.
You know, I could, even though this has been weeks or this has been months or this has been, feels like a very long time, you know, I'm still asking him to speak to me, for his joy. And he's not saying, oh, not you again.
How did you arrive at that conclusion? Because I think some people will wrestle with that, like, oh, God must be just tired of, you know, and kind of feel guilt or shame that I'm still, you know, I haven't gotten better quicker or.
Right. Well, probably I would say that was digging into the truths that I had learned of him, of his presence and of his love for me, his unconditional love. And so then it was just believing what I had read and knowing, okay, he says he's not leaving me and he's there and he's got it.
Yeah. So really, depending on those truths and those moments, leaning into it and really embracing it.
Yes. And there was times when I went back and I made a list of the truths of him that I know about him, or the ones that were in the Bible, and then make my like after stating those or writing them down, like believing them again. It's just like telling myself again, speaking to those.
That's so good, Carol. Sometimes I've talked about ants,
Oh, yes.
automatic negative thoughts.
Yes. Yes.
And they're automatic. You don't have to try to get them to come. You know, you talk about waking up in the middle of the night and those thoughts are just right there. They're automatic. They're negative. The truths are not automatic. Like you have to, you intentionally wrote them down.
Yes.
You spent time rehearsing them, reminding yourself of them. And I think that's so important in the battle with anxiety.
Right.
Like being that intentional, because those negative thoughts can just dominate. They can take over.
Right.
Yeah. I love that you did that. That's great. That anxiety can affect our relationship with God. It affects us spiritually. Obviously, it can, I think, go different ways. Some people will feel like God's far away or distant. But also we often develop a deeper relationship too.
Right.
Was there wrestling with God in that season? How did it affect your relationship with Jesus?
Well, I know there was times that I felt like he was quiet and that I was in a desert. So definitely that would, I did feel like I was in a desert through that. But I was able to still trust in him and he was, and be encouraged in that.
Yeah.
Because he didn't leave me there.
Yes. So you were able to sense his presence in the midst of that, and that, there are times when I think in the Christian world we can feel kind of ashamed of. I mean, it says in the Bible, "Be anxious for nothing," you know, like that somehow we're failing spiritually, or not everybody necessarily feels that. But did you feel any kind of guilt, shame around like having this anxiety, not getting better? Did you have any well-meaning Christians who gave you bad advice in terms of like, oh, you should just trust God more, or, you know, pray more? I don't know. Some people have experiences like that.
Right. I don't have any experiences like that. And I think maybe one of the, in thinking about the anxiety that I experienced in my life, and like to sit here and talk about it, I struggle a bit with feeling like maybe I'm an imposter or a bit of a fraud, because my anxiety was not such that it was like debilitating in my life. And I know that there's people who suffer with debilitating anxiety. And so when I think about that, I know that God is with each one of us wherever we're at. So it was not, since it wasn't like debilitating for me, maybe it was a little more hidden.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was just something I knew that I was dealing with, and I could do a pretty good job of hiding it when I'm, out and about.
Yep. Yeah. That's a really good point. That people who suffer with anxiety, depression, I mean, it's different than a broken arm.
Oh,
like
right,
you can see
exactly.
it, people are like, how's your arm?
Right.
And so often it is a hidden thing that people don't realize. And the title of the series is Not Alone.
Right.
And when it's a hidden thing, it can be more of an isolating journey and
Right.
walking through it feeling alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You mentioned, well, was there a turning point at some point where you felt like, or I don't know, some people it's kind of a dramatic moment. Others it's kind of this slow progress as you worked on that anxiety in different ways. Talk to me about how it got better, like what helped in your journey.
I would say it was kind of a slow process. Like, well, and I just realized I'm doing better. It's not as it's not impacting me as much in the middle of the night or even during the day. It seemed like it was better. It really was. Probably the one thing that has been almost like a gift to me is that last fall I had an opportunity to cater another meal here at the church for a women's gathering.
Okay.
And at first I really struggled with, do I want to say yes to that? I mean, it's been quite a number of years and I know it's exhausting, and do I want to put myself in that
And so,
space?
so to be clear, I mean, some of the anxiety started back around food,
Yes.
serving food.
Yes.
You stepped out of that, and it's
Yes.
been years since you really did a large.
Yes. Okay. So that with conference when I went in was 2012.
Okay.
And where are we now? 20. Okay. So
Actually,
it would have been in fall of 2024
Okay.
when I
So,
did the
12
yes.
years or something like that.
Yes,
And now you're
yes.
stepping back into something that was kind of the trigger of a lot of this anxiety.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And part of how anxiety works is the anxiety will tell you the solution to anxiety is just to avoid
Yeah.
whatever it is that
Yes.
produces the anxiety. As long as you just avoid it, you'll be fine.
Right. Right.
So it takes a tremendous amount of courage to step back into that. So yeah, tell me about that.
So I took a bit of time to pray about it and consider, do I want to do this? Because I knew it was a tall order. But there was a number of things about it that were really appealing to me. First of all, I really resonated with the ministry or the vision of the women's gathering.
Right.
And then she also said that we want to do like collaborating around the menu, and it was to be a very, she called it a dining experience. Like we're not just
There's a lot of
feeding you a meal.
creativity.
A lot of creativity. And I was just excited about doing that, and then felt like, yes, it's a yes. I really want to do this. And then I asked Joanne, again, Joanne is the one who was in the kitchen with me in 2012,
Okay.
if she would help me do this. And so it was teamwork again, and we were at it all summer, like doing planning. We would get recipes and we would make the things and we would get together and try. It was great, but it was kind of coming up stressful.
Yeah.
And that Wednesday prior to the meal on Saturday, I was doing the things. I mean, I had all the lists, had been getting groceries and all of that. And I had texted my daughter and said, I'm working on staying on track so I don't get freaked out before Saturday comes. Then I'm at the kitchen sink and I think I was cutting up leeks. And all of a sudden there's just this feeling like it's just like sitting on me, just pressing pressure. And I'm talking to myself, trying to talk it down. There's enough time. There's enough time. There's enough time. And it just would not, it wouldn't release. It wouldn't go away. And I put my stuff down and got my little bowl of oatmeal, and I went out to the greenhouse. And I just sat down and I said, Jesus, I need your help. And in that moment, I mean, it really was for me in that moment. I just felt like he said to me, I gave this opportunity to you, the serving this meal, to be a time of like a fulfillment of blooming and flowering, and yet you're choosing to be like the garden tiller.
Oh, wow.
And it was such a sweet word to me and very life-giving.
Say more about that. What made it life-giving? What was it about those words that felt so life-giving?
Well, because it was obvious that he gets me.
Mm.
And the fact that he gave me the opportunity so many years later, I felt like it was like a season of redemption and restoration. He's saying, I want to restore some more of the broken parts.
Yeah.
And this is a gift I give you. And it really was, I mean, so that was a Wednesday. And the anxiety did leave me. And not to say that there was no, like anxious moments, or I mean, we got a little harried in the kitchen when it was time to serve on Saturday. And yet it was one of the most fulfilling things.
Wow.
Like one of those definitely top 10 most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
And I think a reason for that is because of the restoration that God had planned in it. And it was just such a gift to me.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. I think those moments are so powerful when Jesus shows up personally and speaks in a way that it's clear he gets us in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the healing and restoration that can happen in those words. It's just powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Any other parts of that experience that were healing, like and restorative? When you think of that meal and being able to do that,
It was, oh wow, it was, even there was relationship pieces in it that were also very restorative, and I was so grateful for that. And Emily, my daughter-in-law, she helped in the kitchen.
okay.
So it was Joanne and her daughter, and Emily came and helped me. I mean, helped us. So we're all working together, and I felt like there was a piece of, well, I guess maybe to even put it into there was a woman who was attending the gathering, and she was an acquaintance of Emily's.
Okay.
And then because they had taken us out on the stage to introduce us
Okay.
and, give their applause and whatever, which she came up back to the kitchen afterwards and just said that she she felt like there was something with Emily and I as mother-in-law, daughter-in-law working together. It was what she was wanting in her relationship
Oh, wow.
with her daughter-in-law. And she was so blessed in seeing us working together.
Okay.
And so I just felt like that was also a piece of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was probably another piece of it that was really amazing to me. There was a woman who was at the gathering who had some food issues. I'll just leave it at that. And during the meal, she felt like she received healing from some of those, and just the others who were at the table with her, said there was just tears. And it was like the food that we really did. We were very intentional about. It was very beautiful, and it was intended to bring healing to the whole experience. And it was a healing experience for her. And so to be a part of that was definitely life-giving and fulfilling for me.
Yeah. I remember hearing you talk about that not long after it, and just that whole experience just seemed to fit you to a T. Like it's not just making food for someone to eat, but
Right.
really being part of an experience
Right.
that was connected to helping other people really find healing in their own journey
Right.
in a lot of ways.
Right. Right.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to circle back just a little bit. You mentioned also being in counseling, being in and take this medication for a season. I don't know if you still take medication for anxiety or not, but tell me a little bit about that. What led you to decide to go do those things, and how were they helpful?
Well, so after I was at the emergency room, they wanted me to have a follow-up visit with my primary care physician.
Okay.
And so that was her recommendation. And so I felt like I needed help. I
Okay.
felt like I needed some help. And then she also recommended that I would see a therapist. And I decided, why not?
Okay.
And so I just found that to be very helpful as well, to be able to go and sit with someone who can help me talk through these
Mm-hmm.
automatic negative thoughts and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you remember how long you would have been seeing a therapist?
Maybe a year.
Okay.
I don't think it was longer than
Okay.
a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So it felt like it was very beneficial. And
Did you wrestle with that decision at all? Medication, counseling? Again, there's some
maybe
people
a
who
bit, but it was like it's available.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm really thankful that I did. Really thankful that I did.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a part of so when I think about that morning in the greenhouse when I said, Jesus, I need you, that feels like maybe to someone who's listening, they say, well, it's not that easy to get rid of, to deal with your anxiety. It's not like their experience is, it's not that easy. No, I understand that. I feel like I did a lot of the hard work back here.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah. I love, part of what I love about your story is, like, I think there's danger in communicating to people. If you just, say, Jesus, I need you, your anxiety is going to all go away.
Right.
And therapy and medicine can be very helpful in a journey, but it's also sad when we fail to recognize how powerful it is to say, Jesus, I need you, and how powerful Jesus can be in meeting us in those moments and helping just be a part of that healing journey.
Right.
And so I wanted people to hear that part of your story, that Jesus is a great therapist as well in that sense.
Right.
He has healing words, and often, especially if we listen to the words he had, Jesus' words often are the exact words we need to hear to target those ants, those automatic negative thoughts.
Right.
It just brings truth
Right.
in a way that speaks so directly to those words.
Yes.
Yeah. How would you describe anxiety now? Do you ever feel that pressure in your chest, or are there moments when you find yourself getting anxious from time to time, or do you feel like at this point that's something that was a journey that's mostly in the past? At this point?
I would say it's mostly in the past.
Yeah.
There's times when I'm under a bit of a time crunch. And maybe it's oftentimes serving a meal, and even just at home. So with 12 people instead of 200. Okay. And then I say to myself things that aren't helpful, like, this is crazy. You can do this. You used to do big meals. Why is this hard? That's not helpful. So I do find myself having, it's definitely minor compared to what it would have been.
What's the, out of curiosity, the what if thought that's happening in those moments?
Oh, what if? That's a really good question. Because what if I'm not ready on time? Whoop-dee.
Yeah. Anxiety has a way of, sometimes I think of it as a little bit of a bully. It has a way of making things bigger than they really are, and kind of pushing fear on us and things like that.
Right.
And the way the what ifs work is, when we think what if, we never think of the most positive potential outcome. It's always the worst potential outcome. Right. And that's what we focus on. So.
Right. And the other thing actually that comes to my mind is, if I'm working towards, another unwelcome expectation I have of myself is perfectionism.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if if I'm having you over, then I want to get this perfect,
Yeah.
so when you get here and I've got these like ideas, these expectations on myself
Yes.
of what it's going to look like. And then when I don't meet those, or I look like I'm not going to meet them, that's what's
Yeah.
causes anxiety.
Yeah. That's so good. I'm glad you brought that up, because that perfectionism can be a big part of that.
Oh.
Because if your target is perfection, that's a sure recipe for anxiety.
Exactly.
It's a pretty high standard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 And that's one that Jesus and I are still working on.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't need help with it. He's working on me.
You still are working on things? I thought at this point you had.
No.
No. We're all a work in progress.
We are. But I'm grateful for the way that, he's the one that is doing he's bringing the opportunities for the work.
Yeah.
And
So say more about, like, how would you say this journey with anxiety has helped you grow personally, spiritually? Like, how has it been? A lot of people look at those experiences like, if I could just avoid it. But most people actually will look back on those situations and say, I really grew from that experience. Like, there was a benefit I maybe couldn't have gotten without walking through that.
right.
Did you find that to be true? I mean, how did it affect your spiritual and emotional growth?
I don't know if I've actually asked myself that question. But I would say it's even thinking about what I shared with the like doing the meal for the With gathering. I feel like that was so I have been in a relationship with Jesus, and for him to give me this opportunity that brought me as much fulfillment in life as that did was such a gift.
Yeah.
And so that in itself is an encouragement to just continue in my relationship with Jesus. I mean, he knows what brings us life. He knows what brings us fulfillment. And I believe that he'll do that when we make ourselves available.
Yeah. I love that. Maybe one of the final things I would say in encouragement, like I'm surprised how many people, when I talk about their personal journey with anxiety or depression, will qualify it by saying, well, but I feel a little bit like a fraud. You had a significant journey. You went to the emergency room twice.
I know.
Like you struggled and affected your sleep and daily life. And it took a lot of persistence and courage and trust to get from where you were to where you are now. And it's been incredible to see you persist in that journey and draw closer to Jesus, and just the restoration that's happened through that process.
Thank you for those kind
Well done.
words.
Any final advice you'd give to somebody who's wrestling with anxiety? What encouragement would you give them?
One thought that just comes to my mind now is when you call out to Jesus for help, sit and listen. I found there was times when I was like, going on about for one, the thoughts were going like this.
Right.
And like maybe I say, Jesus, I need help. I mean, as I'm, going through this, and then we just kind of keep spinning, doing the things.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to, when we come to him for help, really take the time to sit and listen to see what he's going to say.
That's really good. I will often encourage people to, think of a journal, and first just start by writing down those ants, those negative, like, put them down. Like, these are the things you're telling yourself. Let's put them down and realize what you're saying and the kinds of thoughts that lead to anxiety. And then I love just saying, okay, Jesus, like, 2 Thessalonians 4:5, somewhere talks about taking every thought captive.
Yes.
And making it obedient to Jesus. So, okay, Jesus, this is my thought. I've taken it captive here.
Yes.
What do you have to say to that? And then spend time listening.
Right.
And then literally write down what you hear Jesus saying.
Right. And then asking him, like when I would take those thoughts captive, then ask him, what do you replace that thought with?
Yeah. And then what you did is you spent time rehearsing like you have to go back to them and go back to them and
Mm-hmm.
go back to them and go back to them, because these are just going to keep coming at you.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, excellent.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Carol, for being willing to do this. Just your willingness to be vulnerable. I still admire the courage to go back to that meal, like the place where it's kind of the source of your anxiety.
Mm.
God gave you that gift, but you stepped into it and you took advantage of that. And I think this will be a real blessing to people. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for joining us for today's episode of the Maple City Podcast. You can watch for more episodes coming out on the Maple City Chapel app, and you can also find more information about our church, the events going on, the resources available to you. You can also join us on Sunday mornings at 8:30, 10, and 11:30. We hope to see you there. Until then, let's go and be the church.